He can commune with the supernatural, and not just the supernatural, the divine. Even writing in his notebook, "I am God." Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Unbelievable, the podcast where I tell my good friend two unbelievable stories from history. One real, one fake.
And I have to guess which one is which.
That is right. I am the abominable Luis Mejia, joined, as always, by the frequency of the planets, Kurt Danner.
Ooh, it's very ephemeral.
That's right, Kurt. We're going to get cosmical today. We're going to get whimsical. We're going to get mystical. But of course, as always, we're going to get just a little bit stupid.
Oh, yeah.
But before we do, Kurt, as we always do, and since I'm going to be taking the reins of this episode, please, do you have a fast fact for me to start off the show?
I do. I absolutely do. So first, let me tell you a little background, okay? This is some true history right here first, all right?
Okay.
In 1902, President Theodore Roosevelt was invited on a bear hunting trip by Mississippi's governor, and despite the fact that the other hunters on the trip shot several bears, Roosevelt did not even see a single bear. So finally, Theodore Roosevelt's assistants found a black bear and tied it to a tree and then went and got the president. But when Roosevelt got there, he thought that wasn't very sporting, so he refused to shoot the bear. Because Roosevelt was known as a rugged outdoorsman, it was kind of funny that he refused to shoot the bear and also that he ended up doing this whole hunt without getting any bears. So several newspaper articles and political cartoons about this quickly made their way around the country, and a candy shop owner in Brooklyn named Morris Mitchum saw one of these political cartoons, and this combined with the fact that his wife made stuffed animals gave him the idea for the teddy bear. Now, obviously, we all know how successful and extremely popular with children the teddy bear was. It even led to Morris changing his career and founding a toy-making company later. After Roosevelt left office in 1909, William Howard Taft became president. One thing that Taft was known for was eating a lot of possums.
Okay.
In fact, people often gifted him caged possums while he'd be campaigning, or even mailed them to the White House during his presidency. Now, true or false, Luis? In an attempt to replicate the success of the teddy bear, Taft gave permission for the creation of a stuffed toy called the Billy Possum.
Dude, I hate you. This is such just an entire journey. I wasn't even prepared to do this stuff. Remember when we first started this show and our true or false things were like, ooh, did Napoleon tell his wife to bathe? Or something like that. Now we're getting into full subplots. And the best part is that I think that everything else right before the true or false was true, which honestly, yes, that's just very fun. Billy Possum, huh?
Billy Possum. And then all that to end it off with getting hit in the face with the brick of Billy Possum.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say false, mostly because Taft was the governor of Cuba at some point, or one of the islands, I guess, Puerto Rico, I'm not sure. And then he became, I think he's the one that became Supreme Court justice after his tenure as president. I just see him as a very serious figure. I could not imagine him getting involved with the details of selling and marketing a possum play animal. So false.
Well, you know a lot more about William Howard Taft than I do, Luis, because I'll tell you what, I only know one thing, and it's that he had that Billy Possum out there. Come on.
Oh.
It's true.
Come on.
So, during a large dinner for Taft, in which the guests were all served roasted possum, cartoonist named Louis Gregg proposed the idea of the Billy Possum to President Taft, who approved of it. Now, obviously, possums are not as cute as small bears, a fact that Louis Gregg seemed fully unaware of, considering that the first Billy Possum toys were made with real possum skin.
Oh
Just
my God.
A real possum stuffed with stuffing. They were
possum, yeah.
said to look, quote, fleshy looking and repulsive like a pale limp rat. So
Incredible.
That's not a bestseller with kids. And by Christmas of 1909, the same year, the Billy Possum had already completely failed and Louis Gregg had given up. But luckily, I do have one little piece of Billy Possum history to share with you because I found an amazing advertisement for the Billy Possum.
Nice. By God, Kurt, is that Billy Possum I see?
That's him, the very man, William Possum.
The very same. We'll be posting this in our social media, but just so you know, the image that Kurt just sent me, it's a possum with red striped pants on and a nice lettering saying, "Hello, Bill." And more lettering that says, "We love Billy Possum. His coat is so warm. If even we eat him, he'll do us no harm. No more teddy bear will we fondle with glee. Billy Possum in future our mascot shall be." Okay, sweet.
I mean, you just can't beat that. And I do want to add, you said striped pants, but he's got like the Uncle Sam outfit on. Like it's very
That's right,
American
yeah.
going.
They had a vision, and I think it's images like these that make me wish for for different times in marketing agencies. Right now, everyone's just going sans serif, very boring corporate logos. No, bring back possums in Uncle Sam outfits and saying things like, "We will stop fondling with glee our teddy bears."
Take some chances, you know? Get a dead possum skin and stuff it. See
Yeah.
if that's what the kids want. You never know.
And with that,
In that spirit of wonder and disgust.
yeah, in that spirit of childhood wonder, which I think we should all channel more often, particularly you and me, we're gonna move on to our stories. Okay, Kurt, first story, and we're gonna get kind of crazy from the get-go because we're gonna be talking about something that no one else has dared to talk about, and that, of course, is Russian classical music.
Very bold.
Very bold. Okay, so are you familiar with the concept of God, Kurt?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's just hard to get into the headspace of the seriousness of this story after we just talked about Billy Possum so much. I'm a little caught off guard.
No. It's again, I need you to close your eyes and think about God, okay?
And Russian classical music.
Well, yeah, when you don't picture God as a young man living in Moscow composing very strange classical music in the early 1900s, then I want you to start changing the way you think. Okay, Kurt?
This is revolutionary.
Our story begins in 1872.
Good year.
And that is the birth of Alexander Scriabin. Okay?
Okay.
Alexander Scriabin is born in Russia to a family of pianists, composers, aristocracy, mild aristocracy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is someone that would go on to shape, just more modern classical music, turn of the century classical music, particularly in Russia. But when he's born, he's just a dude. Okay, and
Right.
I don't want you to get any ideas of him or paint him in any sort of grandiose way. But he is born on Christmas.
Oh, look
Christmas
out.
Day, he comes into this earth. However, Kurt, there's a slight caveat because he is born in Christmas according to the Julian calendar. According to the Gregorian calendar, he was born on the 6th of January.
How exactly does that work? Can you talk more about that?
Well, you see how the Julian calendar was the calendar that was en vogue for thousands of years since Emperor Julian's time in Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And this calendar was up in use up until the mid-1500s when Pope Gregory the whatever introduced the Gregorian calendar, which is what we use to this day, right? We operate in the Gregorian calendar. However, this change, Kurt, keep in mind, took place in the 1500s, right? 1540s, something like that. It is 1872, and some parts of Russia still have not changed to the Gregorian calendar.
Wow.
And
Old-fashioned.
and it is such case here in Moscow with Alexander Scriabin. But for our story today, Kurt, I want you to scrap the Gregorian calendar from your mind.
Okay.
And keep in mind that Alexander Scriabin was born on Christmas Day.
Okay.
Keep that in mind.
That's the important part. By whatever math we get there.
Yeah, that's right. So now, as we move through Alexander's life as a young boy in late 1900s Russia, he starts to get in conversation with different philosophers and different thinkers of the time, right? Russia, still an empire at this point, still governed by a czar, and still considered like one of the pearls of Europe. Mm-hmm. This is still a great place for intellectualism, etc. And he begins to talk with people. It is said that around 15, he meets one of his tutors that starts teaching him about the tonality of the planets.
Ooh.
And just the importance of tonality and frequency, and this whole idea that when the planets rotate, they actually generate a certain hum and a particular frequency, and that if you're able to channel that frequency, you can do a lot of different like magical things.
Oh, so are we getting pseudoscience-y here? Do the planets actually make a humming noise rotating?
Not really. I mean, this is a theory that goes back all the way to ancient Greece and the first philosophers, right? So, but he's just not. We're noticing that he's having a bit more of a mystic type frame of mind than, say, other intellectuals at this time. He, in that case, well, after hearing this, or as he's hearing this, he becomes trained at the piano. He starts composing. So he starts going to the Russian Royal Conservatory, where he becomes rather proficient at piano. He becomes rather proficient at composing, and he becomes a pretty good composer in his own right. He is a bit of a contemporary of Franz Liszt, as well as Chopin. Not only that, but other composers like Rachmaninoff. So other Russian composers like Rachmaninoff. So he is coming of age musically in an era of really, really cool stuff going on, right? We're moving away from very precise, methodical music making of Johann Sebastian Bach and Mozart to more romantic, more exciting, more inviting things that came post Beethoven, for example. Things that are focused more on emotions, things that are focused more on feelings.
We got this melody from the planets.
Yes. And no one eats this cake, this cookie, like Alexander Scriabin, because not just is he getting really intense about how certain frequencies can heal you and how specific tones played in a specific way can change the way you think and change the way you feel, etc. He gets real excited and starts, thinking of different things. And this is around the time when Jung and Freud and like Albert Einstein is developing his theory of relativity. Freud is publishing all his stuff about his mom, I guess, and
everybody's mom, I think, frankly,
like everyone's mom. Yeah, you're right. And it's also early 1900s, so there's now conversations of revolution, of dissent, especially in Russia, where Alexander Scriabin lives, and there's all of these thoughts going into this guy's head. Now, this guy, he was known to be a bit kooky, right?
Right.
His friends would describe his manner of walking as if he was, quote, flying, unquote. I don't know what that means.
Is he like Naruto running? What's going on here?
I don't know. I really don't know. But they say, yeah, he was just fly everywhere. I think it's more related to the fact that he would kind of hop, skip, jump, run around.
Interesting.
Rather than just walk anywhere. But his friends would describe it as flying. Not only that, but he was known also to like stand on chairs and talk about his dreams anytime he would wake up. And not just that, but later on in his life, he would even jump from chair to chair, from bed to bed, while talking to his wife in attempts to fly.
What?
Very, very cool guy. Yeah, no, this is great. I really do love this.
I can't decide if I'm in awe of him or terrified by him.
I think you should just respect him, frankly. And as he goes through this, he starts writing his first symphony, which his first symphony was known as Prometheus, Kurt. So right from the bat, we're writing about crazy stuff. Someone like writes their first song about their first high school crush. This guy, his first symphony is about Prometheus, who... do you recall what he did, Kurt?
Well, he could be referring to Prometheus that was his first high school crush, to be fair. But the big Prometheus stole fire from the gods to give it to man.
That is right. He stole fire from the gods to give to man. And it's an example of hubris and how we should never go against gods and God's plan, etc. Keep that in mind, okay?
It's weird because it's an example of how somebody should do it, but you shouldn't be the one to volunteer to do it.
That's right, yeah.
Because you do want to end up with fire, but you don't want to get your liver eaten.
Yeah, and again, this is just a story of hubris and how humanity thinks that they can go against the will of the gods And that's the story of Prometheus. That's why he's sentenced to get his liver eaten by birds for the rest of eternity. This man's first... You're goddamn right. Now, this man's first symphony is about Prometheus. And he wants to make the image of stealing fire from the gods as apparent as possible. He visualizes fire, and immediately as he thinks of his music, he thinks of lights. He thinks of colors. Because some people say that this man had synesthesia, which is where you associate sounds with colors, or you associate different things with colors. And it is said that he would associate different keys with different colors, and he rigged up this system where every single time he would play the piano, different lights, different colored lights would come on. And in the score for Prometheus, the entirety of the orchestra should be like, there's directions on how you should light the orchestra according on what colors are being presented by the music, so that you can accurately narrate Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. So again, from the get-go, very conceptual stuff. It is said that he had like a wife that would just sometimes stand behind him as he's composing, and the wife would just be like shining lights at him until something felt right.
She's a ride or die, dude. She's like, yeah, jump from this chair, jump to that chair. Here we go. Here comes the neon lights.
That's right. And here's something quite interesting, Kurt. Alexander Scriabin, he started outlining different theories, right? So he had a private notebook that was not made public until after his death, but around the time when he was finishing Prometheus and playing it, this was later published, but we know that he started writing things in his diary that make him sound like a madman, okay? And this is honestly incredible. It's probably some of the most fun writings of a musician, because he started saying that in our bodies, we have knots of energy. Right, we have different knots of energy that are trapped in our spinal cord that need to be released, and there are knots in our bloodstream that need to be released. And once this energy is set free through waves, in this case sound waves, the energy could migrate to more, I guess you could say, vitalizing parts of the body, such as the brain and the heart. Meaning that by playing specific pieces of music, you could unlock your whole potential. And he writes...
medicinal music.
Yes, and he writes in his notebook, quote, that supernatural sounds could transfigure this existing world into a higher world above our material senses. You see, the mystery is a memory. The body holds every memory and corner of time in each of us. He continues for some time, but he basically says that through this, it exists on each of us to relive the primal integration, to relive the whole history of the race, unquote.
This guy is on something, man. And what is going on here?
Not just that, Kurt, but then he starts writing in his notebook also how he can commune with the supernatural, and not just the supernatural, the divine. At some point, Kurt, even writing in his notebook, "I am God." and at which point, it is said that he went to Lake Geneva and he attempted to walk on water, which clearly he failed. And because he failed, then he instead started preaching to fishermen from a boat, essentially telling them that this world must end and it must change. And I am going to personally bring about this change with my music.
Brilliant recovery.
He was the most dedicated guy that comes up to you at a party and says, guys, my music's going to change the world. No, this guy truly believed it. Not only was he going to change the world with his music was going to physically untangle all the bad from your body and make us ascend to be more nobler beings.
This is insane. This is like if Kanye West was a Russian composer.
Yes.
What was this guy on? You know what I really can't get over is that, like, he didn't intend for this journal to be published at some point or anything, right? Like, is he just like, I know all the secrets of the universe. Through my symphony, you can use 100% of your brain, and I'm going to write it here for no one to read.
Exactly.
What?
And all of this at this point, Kurt, he's still composing music, and he's still doing some really pretty music at this point. Like, he had plenty of music written by the time he was 21. His symphony also, like, by the time he was 25. A bunch of different sonatas for the piano not only are talking on these themes of mysticism, but some of them are just piano ballads that talk about the ocean and different seas. Like, he's got piano sonatas talking about the Baltic, about the Black Sea, about the Mediterranean, you know? And he seems to really want to reflect the natural world through his music. And I really don't know why, but I can take a guess. That is that he wants to make sure that the world can be made apparent through music, and just how it can be made apparent through music, that's how we can change the world as well. And it's quite compelling, honestly. It really is very, very compelling. But this just gives you an idea of what this guy was like. Right.
Yeah, really intriguing, at least. I still can't decide if I'm in awe of him or terrified of him.
I think you might get more in awe of him because he also started introducing, just like he wanted to introduce the oceans and the sea, he also introduced sex into music.
We're getting Freudian.
He really,
Here we
go. He wrote in his notebook that there is an intrinsic link between music and coitus. and he really wanted to find ways to describe sexual acts through music. And he did write in his notebook, quote, "I definitely know that in myself the creative urge has all the signs of sexual stimulation," unquote.
This guy is wild.
Like, I'm gaining, frankly, a lot of respect for this guy. But really, again, he like had this whole idea of this revolutionary or pre-Soviet Russia of just going kind of wild. Yeah, so that's the whole deal with this man. He even started moving away from what we call tonal music, so what we're used to, which is do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? The regular scales, the regular music that we're used to with flats and sharps, and started moving into atonalism, which is going beyond notes that, would you say, sound good?
Okay.
Right? Like, for example, a chord, a regular chord, a C chord, for example. You've got C, E, and G, right? C, E, and G make up a major chord, right? It's what makes it sound pretty. If you were to add any other notes in there, it would change it, but it would not make it sound like a C chord anymore. So he started doing stuff like this, like adding more notes where they really shouldn't be in order to make you think. Right? Like, be a work of music more meant to be thought about rather than listened to.
Yeah. So it's like if you know music theory, then it's like different types of chords have these different components. There's kind of like a structure of it that you can learn, like somewhat of a blueprint. And he's like intentionally messing up that formula.
And not just that, but he would play with this so much in his different works that he found what he called or I guess what scholars now call the mystic chord.
Okay.
Right? Where
that's the one that unlocks 100% of your brain.
I guess so, but he plays that note, that just cluster of notes and cluster of chords that eventually would strike a chord, haha, no pun intended, into your body and to this realm of existence. And not just that, he also wrote a couple sonatas that don't even have a key signature. It's just go crazy.
What?
And in these works where he's trying to find the mystic chord and he's moving to more atonal stuff, the score markings, right? So in the scores in music scores, you tend to have what you call performance notes or score marking, which is basically the composer saying "get loud here" or "get softer here," right? That's where we get the phrase like forte, fortissimo, piano, pianissimo. Retardando, things like that. He, instead of doing that, he would put things that start to sound more like black magic spells rather than instructions.
Eye of Newt here.
Right? He would write in French, l'épouvante surgit, which means surge of terror.
Oh. Oh.
Also, menaçant, right, which is menacing, or sombre mystérieux, which is like mysterious shadow.
What?
Instead of other stuff.
How do you play in a mysterious shadow way? What? Or just like describing
don't
what
know, Kurt.
that
But
section
then-
sounds like?
Yeah, I guess. But there's a piano sonata that's even that's nicknamed the Black Mass, while that it's like trying to exorcise demons. And the other one, his seventh sonata, is explicitly trying to summon demons back into hell. Again, all through music. And this is where you start realizing, oh man, this guy really does think he is God. He is the Messiah. He is saving the world through music.
Imagine like a whiplash moment where he's yelling at someone in his orchestra and he's like, not quite mysterious enough.
Yeah, maybe.
Not quite my tonal.
And it is said that, yeah, he's saying it's like, that is not the surge of terror I was looking for. and it gets you a little bit into this man's brain, which I really, really appreciate. But then, Kurt, we're going to go into his magnum opus.
Oh, boy.
Okay?
We're going beyond the ones that tried to
His magnum
summon
opus.
and banish demons.
Yes, because he started working on this piece in 1903. This piece was going to be called Mysterium. Okay.
Classic Alexander.
He started working on this composition in 1903, and he wrote a bunch of notes on it saying that this piece of music was going to be fully immersive. What does that mean? In his own words, there will not be a single spectator. All will be participants. The cast of performers includes an orchestra, a large mixed choir, an instrument with visual effects, dancers, a procession, incense, and rhythmic textural articulation. Right? Not only that, but he says that the venue where this piece of music will be played is not one of stone, but will continually change with the atmosphere and the motion of the piece itself.
I feel like he's going to light the building on fire at the end of the concert.
He's not. He is saying that the piece was going to open with bells ringing directly from the clouds, right?
This piece of music will be played from inside your own head.
And not just that, Kurt, but the whole experience will be made even better by including mists, fog, lights, and different sounds. So it's going to be a 4DX experience.
Yeah,
right?
seriously.
Everyone's going to be involved. And Kurt, wait until I tell you just what this concert was going to look like, because he already had found his perfect venue.
Oh, boy.
It's in the foothills of the Himalayas.
Of course it is.
He said,
naturally.
I'm going to play this in the foothills of the Himalayas in an event that would take 7 days to perform this whole thing, by which afterwards, by performing this event, the end of the world will happen.
Oh.
And
okay.
after this end of the world, every single person, or every single the entirety of the human race will have just changed into, his quote, more nobler beings. And we will be replaced with just this higher echelon of people. And
wow.
That's the
Guy's
Mysterium.
Insane. And it seems like he really
However,
believed
Kurt,
this. Like, he wasn't just trying to be artistic. He was like, the world is really going to end and be reborn, sort of.
I guess so. And he did write. He didn't write a lot of it. Well, he did write a lot, but not of the piece itself, because he did write 72 pages, Kurt, of just the prelude, aka just the music that plays when you're gathering your seats.
Oh,
that's 72 pages worth of music.
So when you said 7 days, you mean like no stopping 7 days? Like, are they going to sleep in between, or it's like literally 7 days straight of music?
Kurt, I fear we don't know this information because Alexander Scriabin died in 1905. Sorry, in 1915.
No.
Right? So he started writing this in 1903 and died in 1915 at the age of 43, Kurt. This man was not even 45. and he died very young, again, leaving 72 pages of a sketch of basically just the prelude to this piece of work that would change our life, basically. And after his death, Kurt, this music that would invoke demons, also exorcise them and send them back to hell. Also music that would bring out sex and other topics of the sort, was banned in the Soviet Union because it was too intense.
Oh.
It's all classical music. It's just symphonic music.
Right.
But it was too intense to the point where it was used for the return flight of Yuri Gagarin, the cosmonaut. And the Soviet Union got really angry and banned it. Banned his music for some time. And that's where our story comes to end about Alexander Scriabin. But I want to just tell you one quick fact, Kurt. He died the 27th of April of 1915. But that is the Gregorian calendar, 1915.
Oh, no.
Kurt. If we're looking at the Julian calendar, he died the 14th of April of 1915, Kurt, which coincidentally is Easter.
Oh, what? Man, now I'm like,
born on Christmas
what if
Day,
he was right? What
died
if
on Easter?
What if he just needed to play the symphony and everything would have been right in the world?
But we'll never know. We really will never know. And it's intense. It's intense.
So we have 72 pages of the intro, and then I guess he had written down or discussed plans of what the rest of it would look like with other people. That's how they knew there would be these other performers and stuff.
Yeah, everything I told you about this never finished piece of music was written by him in his notes. Right, so everything was outlined like exactly what he wanted it to be. Right, he didn't finish the piece of music, so there's really no good way to perform this because we don't have a finished work. But he did work for nearly 10 years on this and didn't finish it.
Wow, I wonder how long it would have taken him to actually finish it then. Maybe it was never going to happen.
I don't know.
And do you know anything about the 72 pages that we do have? Like, is it good or is it just weird?
I think it's just weird. I mean, someone did manage to recreate it, but it's just a strange piece of music that I guess was never ready to see the light of day.
This is so strange.
And yeah, that is him. That is the life of Alexander Nikolayevich Scriabin, born in Moscow. Died in Moscow. Born in Moscow on Christmas Day, died in Moscow on Easter Day.
That's insane. I feel like I can't even give my brain time to think about that part, though, because I'm just like, everything you learn about this guy raises more questions. Like, he's the king of refusing to elaborate. He just showed up and transferred from musical composing to running a cult somehow and then died before finishing.
Yeah, yes. And we will never know. We'll never know his brilliance because he was taken from the world way too soon.
Maybe he could have even learned to fly, given enough time. Maybe he was one chair jump away from it.
This one will work. I will jump so high that the sound of me hitting the floor will readjust every single living cell in my body.
Wow. Think about I wonder if there's an alternate timeline out there where he didn't die and this concert actually happened, because I feel like that would just result in a bunch of people freezing to death in the Himalayas. That could have been like one of the most major events in Russian history.
Yeah.
People say it all went downhill when they killed Harambe, in the Cincinnati Zoo, but maybe this is when it started. It all went downhill when this guy never finished his symphony. He could have changed everything. He saw what was coming. Got one glimpse of the 2020s, and he was like, I got to do it now.
Yeah. We're a broken world without this man's mysterium. What secrets did he know? Alrighty, Kurt. Now that we took a quick dive into mysticism, into the magical world of healing music and the healing power of symphonic music, we're going to move on to some, I don't know, I think we could call some real mysticism, Are you ready for some real mysticism? Something
That
really
wasn't
does
real
affect our everyday
mysticism? I
lives?
thought that answered all the questions of what everything wrong in the world is stemming from. No, please. Okay, I guess that was
No,
just
Kurt,
the
I think
appetizer. Let's get into the real mysticism.
I think you're going to leave this episode with way more questions than any answers that I will be able to give you.
I'm getting nervous.
Kurt, we are going to the Himalayas again, baby.
What?
We are back at the Himalayas.
We returned to the scene of the crime.
This time we're in Tibet. We're having a good time, enjoying the nice view from outside our window that is Mount Himalaya and Mount Everest. Sorry, the Himalayan mountains and Mount Everest and all the different mounts therein.
Okay, nice.
Now, Tibet, as you may be familiar, Kurt, is a very cold place. Not just that, it's an incredibly isolated place, right? Tibet, for those of you who don't know, is on the far southwest corner of what is now China. It is currently an autonomous region, if you want to call it. I mean, China says that Tibet is theirs, but Tibet says that they're independent. We don't want to get into political arguments.
No, go ahead. Weigh in, Luis.
Days.
Let's get you on the record.
Nah, I'm so okay.
Stop the podcast.
Listen, I'm very okay with claiming the independence of Taiwan. However, I fear for my life for settling an argument between China, Tibet, and India. That is not territory I want to get into. But in any case, Tibet is a culture that developed in a very much independently from a lot of different parts of the world because of the Himalayan mountains, Kurt. I mean, there's so many different mountains. There's so many geographic borders and geographic boundaries that keep people from moving around and going to different places.
That's so interesting when a culture gets shaped by the geography that they exist in, especially if it's, like you're saying, like isolating in a way.
Right. And you know, this meant also that villages were typically very small. This could range like from around to 300 people to 1,000 at the most. But really, we're not talking big places. Again, they're very spread apart, very far away. And the ethnic groups, some of the ethnic groups that are in these parts of the world, in these mountains, are what we call the Sherpa, right? Sometimes we would just call Sherpa a guide, but Sherpa, it's actually an ethnic group that lives around this area. But coincidentally, they're in the mountains. Of course, they're going to be good mountaineers.
Right.
Right?
Mountain is all they know.
It makes sense. And not just that, but because of mountaineering, and because mountaineering is such an important thing, and it's such an important part of that culture, there is a more favorable view toward men rather than women. I mean, never-ending story for all of the world.
It's a classic.
But here in Tibet, it's very pronounced because, there are women and men that do participate in mountaineering, but traditionally, it's men that do most of the mountaineering and traveling, and are the ones that do all the trade with India, with China, etc. Now, there's a region in Tibet called Ngari, right? Ngari, Ngari, that not only is it the most remote region of the Himalayan mountain range, right? Like, it is about 2 days trip from any other nearby village or nearby settlement.
Okay. It's pretty far.
But it's one of the most very remote region. But it's home to Mount Kailash. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. My Tibetan is not up to date these days. My Duolingo is didn't get me too far. But Mount Kailash, Kurt, is a site of very great importance. Cultural importance, but also religious importance, because near to this mount, there is the source of 4 rivers, including the Indus River. Now, I don't know how much you know about the Indus River, but one of the very first settlements, or one of the first, traces or evidence of, quote, civilization, unquote, is in the Indus River Valley civilization.
Right.
Contemporary to Mesopotamia, potentially even prior to Mesopotamia. So this river, the Indus River, is known to grant life. So that's why this whole area surrounding Mount Kailash is incredibly culturally and religiously important, so much so that it's mentioned, this specific mount, by name in Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and the Bon religion, B-O-N religion, right? So this is a very important mountain.
It's a popular landmark. Just one mountain.
Popular landmark. Everyone knows it. You've heard of it. I've heard of it. Now, a yearly pilgrimage to this mount takes place. I mean, yearly implies every year. So every year, a pilgrimage happens to Mount Kailash and to this region in general. And doing this pilgrimage was a huge part of Sherpa culture and Sherpa tradition. And since they're coming from all over Tibet, but also some parts of Western China, northern India, there are travelers that go to this area that some of them take months to get there. Again, remember, It's a very isolated place. So it's an important pilgrimage site.
It's got to eat up a lot of time. 3-month journey. That's 3 months you're going there, 3 months back, live your life for 6 months, then you leave again.
There are stories that say that you could even take 6 months getting there. So a whole year of your life is dedicated to getting to this mount, and then
you have to leave again because it's yearly. You're just never not going on your pilgrimage.
Exactly. You just keep going. It's a never-ending story. But there is a saying in Tibetan culture that would essentially argue, or I guess just posit, that there's really no journey long enough to dissuade anyone from seeing the wonders that await them on Mount Kailash. Right? So there's no journey too far to see what's going on top of this mountain. And part of the pilgrimage is people gathering, and they select lucky 15, which doesn't sound like too much, but then considering that how many people are really getting to the mountain every year, probably not too many.
Right.
But they select a lucky 15 to climb up the mountain, see everything up there, and then come down and be respected as seers and advisors of they saw the mountain, right? Now, when these people would come down, they would now be respected as elders for their towns. They would be respected as someone that overwent just a great, not just physical journey, but also spiritual journey. But
that's a pretty good deal, though. Kurt. You win the mountain lottery, then you get a promotion at work just for that.
That's right. But here's the thing, Kurt. No one that goes up the mountain is allowed to speak of what goes up in the mountain.
Oh, that's an interesting twist.
No one knows what's up there. No one knows what awaits them up there. No one knows exactly what they were doing up there.
They're not allowed to mention that they saw Alexander, what's his name, at the top of the mountain up there hanging out.
That's right. Yeah, playing his light up keyboard. No, no one's supposed to say exactly what goes on up there. It's kind of like a Fight Club situation, right? You don't know about it. You just kind of gotta be in the know. But the only people that can discuss it are the ones that have already been up there. But that's a very, very limited group year by year. Now here's another thing. Here's another curious thing about the people that would go up there is that about 30% of every single person that would climb up the mountain within a year or two would die of infection.
Oh.
Which,
very curious. Definitely not a lot of talking amongst the former mountaineers about what went on then.
Yeah, and there started to be a lot of conversation internationally even, especially as we started nearing the modern age, about what the hell is going up in this mountain and why are people traveling for 6 months just to see, or just for a chance to see what's up here. Well, Kurt, in 1887, something magical happened, or I guess tragic happened. And that is the Europeans found Tibet.
So much for that 15-person limit.
An English archaeologist named Neville Grisham. Grisham? I don't know. Neville Grisham, he undertook this expedition to go see the beauties of Mount Kailash. One of the first, at least the first recorded white man from England to go visit this mountain. And he, upon arrival, was incredibly surprised and very excited that in 1887's pilgrimage, he was chosen as one of the 15 to go
Was
up
he?
Mount Kailash.
Interesting.
He was. He was. Now, those that go up the mountain are chosen by the previous people that went up the mountain, so they must have seen something in them. But it's their criteria, right?
Oh, so it's not random.
If they did something wrong, no, it's not random. It's basically these guys check your vibe and say if you're ready to go up there. And this guy passed the vibe check. Lucky for him, or not so lucky for him, because 15 people went up to the mountain and only 14 came down that year.
Oh?
Neville Grisham never came down from Mount Kailash.
And they can't, send up the paramedics to go get him.
Here's the thing, Kurt.
You have to wait till next year.
People have died in this pilgrimage before. Not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But it has never been a white man.
Uh-oh.
And India being so close to this region, India is being ran, or it's an English protectorate, right? So an English colony.
Quote unquote India.
So the English authorities find out about this news and say, okay, what's going on? What's happening here? So in 1880, it takes some time for the word to get around, but eventually 1880 comes around and English authorities decide to shut down Mount Kailash for everyone. No more fun for no one. And they start to do investigations
Neville ruined it.
as to what is going on. So they get to Mount Kailash and they establish a temporary fort there, or a temporary settlement to house English troops.
I'm sure this will be very respectful of the pilgrimage.
Oh, of course, Kurt. Oh, no, please. They don't let any other pilgrims arriving. So imagine you've been traveling for 6 months and you get and see an English fortification and they're telling you to just bugger off, as they would say. They send a group of soldiers up Mount Kailash, Kurt. And these group of soldiers, as they get closer and closer to the peak of the mountain, it's not huge. It's not a huge mountain, but it's a I don't know, a couple hours journey.
Okay.
They start seeing monkeys, Kurt. Macaques.
Okay.
Tibetan macaques, which makes sense. It's
right.
Macaques that live in Tibet. But they start seeing Tibetan macaques, and as they go up there and start shooing them away, I guess, from the peak, they start noticing that there are hands and feet sticking out of the ground.
Oh.
And different limbs that are very apparent sticking out from the snow. And limbs of all different shapes and sizes. What do I mean by this? There's tiny little hands, there's normal looking hands, there's feet, tiny feet. They start digging, they start going into just what's going on, and they find a bunch of natural mummies, Kurt.
Whoa.
Of macaques. Macaques mummified themselves. Or just, I guess they died and then fell into this ground with the cold and everything. They just became mummies.
Wow.
In a way. And not just that, they also find the body of Neville Grisham.
Also mummified, I'm assuming?
And also mummified. Yeah, I mean, preserved by the snow. It's been maybe half a year since he died, but he's still there, just chilling. Imagine if he was alive. Right? But yeah, turns out he goes up there, and now the English are like, okay, we have probable cause. We found a dead guy.
Probable cause for
and
what?
Of course, since the police and the authorities, I don't know, but for something to have happened.
This is probable cause, boys. Start exporting the gold.
That's right. Authorities see a dead white man, and that's when they actually care. And that's exactly what happened. Now, there were just another detail, Kurt. There were so many mummies of monkeys there that some of them seemed hundreds of years old, right? There were just a whole lot.
Wow.
There. Very curious. Now,
very
Kurt,
spooky.
They would come down and naturally start asking people nearby, saying, what the hell is going on in that mountain? The very close group of Mount Kailash survivors, if you want to call them that, would start saying, I'm not going to tell you. To which the British replied, yes, you are, and started torturing people.
Oh.
To get information.
All right. This is going great so far.
And remember when I told you that this was almost like a Fight Club situation?
Right.
Turns out that some of the interrogated folk did speak out and say that when they would get up to the mountains, they would start fighting the monkeys.
What?
So much so, grabbing monkeys, punching them, and stunning them to the point where they could, and really, I apologize for what I'm about to say, not just to you, but to our audience, so that they could sodomize the monkeys.
What?
Kurt. And then once that happens, they would leave them there to, quote, bless the mountain.
Oh, wow. This got really dark. Really dark.
Yeah, I apologize. We were having a lot of fun.
I was really hoping we weren't
And
going to have to
they
go
found-
down from the first story, but oh boy, here we are.
And then we found out that Neville Grisham, when he went up there, he didn't want to do that. You know, he got to that stage and says, I don't want to be punching monkeys or having sex with them. So he resisted and was not as forceful as he could be. He ended up being attacked by a lot of the monkeys, by a lot of the macaques. And not just that, but he was beaten by the rest of the people up there.
Wow.
That were upset that he was not following traditions.
Neville Grisham, kind of
and
good
left
guy
to
in the
die.
end? Big plot twist?
Kind of, I guess. I mean, this is, again, a tradition that had been going on for hundreds of years, if not thousands. Now, here's the thing, Kurt. When these soldiers came down from this mountain and started describing what they had seen up there, and they started saying, we saw mummified remains of men and monkeys, and we found out that they were having relations with monkeys and things of the sort. Word started getting around in Britain. Word started getting around across the European world of what was going on. Of course, this was pushed forward by racist Europeans that were like, look what they're doing up in Tibet, stuff like that.
Right.
But this idea of man and monkey joining together up in the mountain, finding remains of a man-monkey kind of vibe, got bastardized across tongues and started being shared mouth to mouth. That when Lawrence Waddell, an Englishman that went to explore the Himalayan mountains, arrived in 1900s or 1899, 1900s, he would hear stories of nearby people, nearby Tibetans, saying that there is a man beast living in the Himalayan mountains. And Lawrence Waddell wrote a book named Among the Himalayas. Okay?
Okay.
Whereas the first recorded telling, or I guess published on paper, of what we would know as the Yeti.
Whoa. This is not where I was expecting this to go.
So Waddell said that he had heard stories of a bipedal ape-like creature, but then when he went up to ask Tibetans, he wrote, quote, "None of the many Tibetans that I have interrogated on this subject could ever give me an authentic case. On the most superficial investigation, it always resolved into something that somebody heard tell of," unquote. So the very first thing we know of the Yeti is of this dude asking people, hey, is this true? And everyone going, whoa.
Huh. And but local people are also like, there's a Yeti thing out there? Like, they knew what he was talking about?
They saw some sort of ape-like, human being in this era, right?
Right.
And they would talk about it. However, whenever he would go to talk to people and local Tibetans, they'd be like, yeah, we've kind of heard some stuff, but it's kind of what we know.
Huh, that's
We
interesting.
just know there's a monkey and a man involved.
But so it's all seemingly connected because there's like these stories of what's going on the sacred mountain with the people and the monkeys, and then via like a long game of telephone that turns into like there's a man ape snow creature out there. But even that gets back to like local people in the Himalayas who are then believing it. That's really interesting. Or it makes you wonder if like it went out into the world and was misinterpreted and then got back around, or if it happened in locally and abroad simultaneously.
Yeah, so it's it's very curious what's going on. And since then, I mean, people have gone to the Himalayas in 1920s, 1930s expeditions in order to find this supposed creature, but it probably all stemmed from these rumors and just game of broken telephone that went around due to the findings on Mount Kailash.
Wow. That is quite a twisty, turny story. And like I said, I was really hoping that we weren't going to go downhill from the first story, but it's so dark in the middle and then so oddly intriguing at the end that this might be like the unknown origin story of this mythological creature.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. When they would send the 15 chosen people up the mountain every year, were there like people from the previous years going with them or something? Or how did like this tradition get passed on year to year?
No, I mean, they would just go up. And I mean, I don't know, Kurt. Probably they heard say something. I really don't know, honestly. But I guess in the process of selection,
yeah,
maybe they said something. Or maybe you grew up in your culture hearing about this kind of thing, but unclear, dude.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, it's because it's like so far back in time and such an isolated place that we don't know like a lot of the details. Did people go back to a pilgrimage to this mountain, or is it something that ultimately was completely abandoned after this?
You know, it was kind of abandoned around early 1900s. Funny enough, soon after the Russian Revolution and the rise of communism, because China started appropriating Tibet and occupying Tibet.
Oops.
And, you know, communism is not something that really vibes with religion.
Right.
So
historically,
they just basically said, stop this. And, you know, there hasn't been anything since 1920s.
Wow. That is just insane. It's a lot to digest.
Yeah, it's a sour taste in mouth. I apologize for this.
It really does.
You know, whenever like it really leaves you kind of face down, face down in the dirt,
face down and mummified,
just like the macaque. No. Alrighty, Kurt. Well, those were the two stories I had for you today. Let me give you a quick reminder. What you just heard was the story of Mount Kailash, Mount Kailash in the Himalayan mountains, and the strange yearly tradition and pilgrimage that would take place involving very indecent acts with monkeys, leading to the origin of the Yeti myth. And of course, our first story was about Alexander Scriabin, Russian composer who thought himself God.
Full-time Russian composer, part-time God.
Two options there, man. What are your thoughts?
Both of these stories, I feel like I'm just like stuck in such a limbo on, because I really, you know, for both of them, for different reasons, I really want to know if they're true or not, so I can either like forget that information or hang on to it. So I'm actually quite anxious to get to our least favorite part of this podcast today, which is deliberation.
All right, Kurt, what are your thoughts? The Himalayan Yeti, or the God composer?
I feel like these stories are just like pulling my brain in such opposite directions too, because, you know, okay, well, let me start with talking about our God composer here. Okay, first of all, I'm just intrigued by like, what is this man's insanity? What's going on here? Is there a chance that he was right and he could have healed the world? But also, like, his brain must have been such an interesting place. And there's also a part of me that's kind of intrigued by, like, maybe his brain was broken in a very specific way that actually helped him create a lot of good art or good music. Because, you know, one thing I think about sometimes is that for Albert Einstein, in the same time period, to come up with the theory of relativity, he basically had to, like, disregard what most of the commonly held notions of the physics of the universe were. And one theory about why maybe he was
Yeah.
able to do this was because his brain might have been wired slightly differently or thought about things in a different way. I forget the specifics, but much like how this guy's color coding all the notes in his piano and like doing a lighting setup for the symphony, in the way of like,
Yeah.
sound and music connected. So maybe that, even though he was a little crazy, it allowed him to create something that no one else necessarily could have created. But then it will be so sad if this turns out to be true and his magnum opus never got finished, and it could have been like just frankly the wildest concert of all time. Potentially, either way, the true story is the wildest thing that could have happened at the Himalayas, honestly.
Interestingly,
So I feel like
it's the second weirdest thing.
if that, yeah. So I feel like if that story ends up being true, I'm gonna like just immediately go start looking into this guy to figure out like what was his deal. Honestly, I gotta know if it's even possible to find out. But then the second story here, this is high stakes for me, because I feel like, okay, you don't encounter references to a Yeti in your everyday life, but it happens regularly enough, And if this story is true, now every single time I hear some reference to a Yeti, I have to feel the pang of guilt, because I have this knowledge of what the origin of this mythological creature might be, which is just another level of disturbing. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say I'm finding some parts about the Yeti story a little hard to believe, like how this tradition could have gotten passed down. And also, it's tricky to say, like, is the Yeti definitively connected to these other stories? And I don't know. To me, it just seems like a little difficult to believe that this could have gotten all the way around to where local people also have confused this. But again, I'm weighing this against the other person thought he was literally God. So we're not really in the realm of easy to believe to start with here, I guess. And I think there's also maybe a calculation for me that like the Yeti story is really dark. And if that's a made up story that you chose to put those details in the podcast, that's a pretty bold play.
Yeah,
but I think somehow, maybe it's because I want to believe that the Mysterium was just what we needed, could have healed the world, and so there's still a chance to finish this guy's magnum opus. But I feel like I'm leaning more towards the truth of the Mysterium. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and cross my fingers for the potential of a better world, and say I'm not believing in the Yeti origin story, nor am I believing in the existence of a Yeti, based on this evidence. I'm going with the Mysterium Alexander composer thinks he's God story as true. Final
Very well,
answer.
Kurt. Very well, Kurt. Well, I hate to say that I think the revelation of this story is going to speak, I don't know if highly of me is the word that I want to use, but it's going to start raising some questions about my sanity. Because you are indeed correct, Kurt. Alexander Scriabin was a real guy, and he did believe every single thing that I just talked to you about.
I'm just happy for the Macaques more than anything, honestly.
Yeah.
This goes out to all our Macaque listeners.
Yeah.
This one was for you.
This one goes out to you, Macaque listeners. Yeah, so I made that up. If you please allow me, Kurt, I want to give a little bit of an insight of my train of thought as to why, just why.
Sure, let's hear
it. Yeah, so I was thinking about just famous myths and famous legends, and I came across the one about Catherine the Great, the myth that says that she was really big into having sex with horses, and that she had set up a special harness to hold horses so that they could be lowered into her bed so that she could more easily have intercourse with these.
Oh, wow.
And there's a story that says that one of these harnesses broke, the horse fell on her, and she died. And that's how Catherine the Great died. Like, that's a story and a legend and a myth that I had heard about. And my first thought, angrily, the first thought that came to my head is, damn, you don't get any fun bestiality stories like this one anymore. And I don't know why.
What happened to all the bestiality out there?
Yeah.
Come on.
What
Bring
happened
it back,
to the
Luis
bestiality
says,
we used to
podcast.
talk about? And I had some friends over, and I was asking them, hey guys, what is an animal that's like not disgusting or not that if you say that I'm like having sex with this animal, it can be kind of funny, right? And they said monkeys.
Luis, you're one of the few people I think who could ask a room full of friends that, and they wouldn't immediately be worried about you.
Well, I told them, I was like, well, the dog's too close to people, a cow too close to people. What's an animal that's like just far removed from like modern society that you're like, okay, this almost seems acceptable. Not acceptable, but if anything, you can laugh at it. There's
you can stomach the notion of it might have happened.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm really just digging myself into a deeper hole here, and I really am. I really am, and I want to get out of here quick. But yes, all of this is fake, Kurt. Everything was made up. That's where I'll leave you.
I think yeah, you got out of there just in time. But well, that does kind of make me happy because I'm like, okay, the monkeys are safe. And I will say we've always got to keep changing it up to fool each other because we've now been doing this for quite a while, So you gotta sometimes throw in a weird one to reset, like a palate cleanser, to kind of shock the other one of what you may or may not make up. So I respect it, Luis. It was a good move, but I feel like I'm glad that I guessed that one correctly because I really would have hated to have been on the team of hoping for that story to have been true only to find out I was wrong.
And as I am one to like my themes and my stories, Kurt, I did try to look up similar stories for the real one, and so here you have me looking up stories about the Yeti, stories about Tibet, stories about the Himalayas. God forbid, stories about bestiality, but
I was gonna say, been doing a little research, Luis.
Please do not go through my through my browser history. It's quite embarrassing these days. But that means that Alexander Scriabin is real, 100% real, and everything I told you about him is very much a real thing.
That's insane. Yeah, let's talk about this guy for a second. So. Remind me again what year he was born?
1872.
So the end of the 17th century, and then he died in 1915. That seems so late in history for that guy to be this insane. When you said he was born on Christmas Day, I was thinking about our prophetess, Margareta Peter, who also had her own pretty wild cult. But that was like a lot further back in history. It seems like this is late enough that like just regular common sense and science should have been interfering with some of these beliefs about how music is going to change the world. But I keep coming back to this caveat that like he never got to finish the piece. Maybe he was right.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the reason he died, Kurt, which I think this is just a fantastic detail, is that he got a pimple on his lip that eventually became an ulcer, which eventually became like just a wound that grew so big and disastrous for him that he died of sepsis because of it. So
wow,
if his
should have listened to more of his own music.
I was gonna say, if his music could not cure him from this carbuncle or whatever the thing was growing in his mouth was, then how much of a chance did he have to heal the world, Kurt?
What if he had lived and then we found out that Mysterium, first 72 pages of prelude, and then for the rest of this performance, we're going to need some macaques.
Hear me out. Bring me.
We choose 15 people from the audience.
Bring me
Hear me
30
out.
pounds of incense, flashing lights, 20 macaques, and 15 men. And the mysterium will finally be accomplished. And I will say
we've reached a higher nobility and whatever, but at what cost?
Yeah. So, this piece was never realized, fully realized. There's a series of composers and musicians that try to do something, right? Because the 21st of June of what year is this? I don't know which year this was, but the 21st of June of recently, some musicians got together to try to tried to recreate Mysterium. The concert itself was not really meant to perform Mysterium, but to pay homage to Scriabin and his artistic ideas, exploring this concept of synesthesia, exploring this concept of lights, sounds, sense all working together. And they got together in the Himalayas, in a big courtyard in the Himalayas, and started playing a lot of music. And it's kind of wild. It's pretty cool.
And the world ended.
And I guess so. If I knew which year this was performed in, we could clearly say the word "and then." When this take place? Oh, this was 9 years ago, Kurt. This was 10 years ago, basically. So it didn't really work. Okay. Thanks, guys. His final opus,
Good try anyway.
The Mysterium Magnum, was the mystery all along was that we didn't have a chance. Basically,
this guy really was just insane.
This guy really was just insane, and I think we respect him for it. If you guys have some time, listen to Alexander Scriabin. He actually does have really fun, moving music. It's really good. If you're into classical music, I do recommend it. You probably already know him. And if you're not into classical music, this guy's music is pretty rad. So go take a listen. Go take a listen. It's really fun.
I like that our theme today was be insane. Even with the fast fact we started out, we were like, be insane. Let's just stuff a possum skin. And then we were insane making some music. And then, dare I say, in the fall story, we may have gotten a little too insane. We may have been immorally insane.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got criminally insane. Honestly, I'm glad that not a lot of people listen to this podcast. So authorities, look away. My God, good thing we don't have a huge following, because how am I gonna get canceled?
That's true. That's true. Good thing you're not famous. Well, that brings our score to 5 for me and 7 for you, Luis. So I'm catching up little by little.
Catching up, Kurt.
I'm closing the gap.
Yeah, closing the gap. I'm getting nervous, Kurt. This season has been really fun. It's been really good.
It has been a lot of fun. It's been a roller coaster.
I'm excited. That's right, and I'm eager to see where we go to next. I really do hope that your stories, Kurt. I hope that your brain is less freaked out than mine is.
Yeah, believe me, we won't be going back to this same mountain in my next episode.
Thank God.
I'm gonna purge that from my brain.
Please do. Everyone do the same as well. And thank you for listening, everyone. It is a pleasure as always. What did you think of the stories? Do you think they were fun and exciting and interesting, or were you concerned for my mental well-being? Please do let us know. You can find us on social media. We're on Twitter at Unbelievable PC. We're also on Instagram at Unbelievable Pod. We'll be uploading some of the pictures that we talked about in this
Billy
podcast
Possum
today, some show notes, little Billy Possum, and maybe some other fun stuff along the way. If you liked the show, let us know. Leave a rating. If you hated it, leave a rating too. Really, no press is bad press. We are always listening. If you want,
desperate for
if
attention.
you're a real one, if you're a real one, go into our Instagram and comment on the most recent post. Look at Kurt's thighs. You know, if you know, you know.
I don't think I even know.
Thank you for listening. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back with some more stories.
And remember, everyone, get insane with it.
Okay.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.